Okay. Good. Oh, I think, there we go. Okay. Okay. Screen share so we can all see the text. I have sent it to the WhatsApp group. If you're not in the WhatsApp group, please send a message in the chat and I'll send the link so you can join it. Okay, let me do make this full screen. Nice. Okay, so last week we went up through verse 20. I'll make it a little bigger, right? Oh, that's too big. Oh, I just have to move this over. Okay, good. Oh, that's fine. Okay. The victorious warriors are those who, having disregarded all suffering, vanquish the foes of hatred and so forth. Common warriors slay only corpses. So if you're using a different translation, it will be a little different, but it's actually kind of nice to look at different translations because it gives you a slightly different sense of the meaning of the verse. And again, just to review, this was saying that common warriors means what? Soldiers, right? Military people who are, their role is to kill. Or defend, but including kill. So common warriors slay only corpses. Well, what do common warriors slay? Who do they kill? They kill other human beings, right? Human beings, why are they only corpses? Well, because we're going to die anyway, right? No matter how many, how the best warrior, the gold medal, or not gold medal, sorry. What do they give people? Purple Heart, right? Some kind of, great medal you earn for bravery and valiance and valor in a battle, a war, or however many people you are able to kill. All those people were going to die anyway. They're going to die anyway. So how heroic is it really to just kill something that's already about to die? Right? But instead, if we're able to vanquish the foe of hatred, right? Slay the enemy of hatred itself, and so forth, means all of the disturbing emotions and destructive emotions, right? All of the ignorance, all of the cognitive distortions, misperceptions, right? These things that cause war, from the root of what causes war, right? What causes war is not a bad guy out there, another human. That's a condition, sure. So you can't say, we can't completely ignore it from the whole picture. It's not the root cause of war, right? The root cause of war is our internal destructive emotions or afflictive emotions, right? Hatred itself, right? Why do we go to war? Well, I have my people and my country, which we need to grow, expand, or we need to defend. And we need the resources for me and my, right? Attachment. The ignorance that's grasping at myself, my people, my group, right? We have this in-group, out-group bias, that division, right? Not recognizing that we all ultimately are equal because we all wish for happiness, all living beings, right? We all wish for happiness and we all wish to be free of suffering equally with no distinction. So why would we distinguish in-group versus out-group? It's a type of ignorance. It's a mistaken perception. From there, right, then we feel a threat. Oh, but that person in the out-group, he wants to take from my in-group, from us. They want to take from us. They want to harm us. So now we have fear. From that, we have, I'm not going to let you. No, you're bad. I want you to be destroyed. That feeling of anger, right? That anger. So anger, attachment, and ignorance, right? That's the root causes of war. Okay, so if we can vanquish those, if we can slay those, anger, attachment, and ignorance, then the wars, we stopped it before it even happened. right? Then we can still, of course, there are disputes. There's still conventional reality. There still are other people who live in different places. It doesn't deny that there's a big globe with different places and different people and different cultures. No, it doesn't deny any of that. But it just allows us to live within that reality with a sense of acceptance and tolerance for others, a sense of care for others, right? Seeing the humanity in others. And that would lead to genuine, you know, an ability to resolve our differences without falling into war and killing. And we see it does. Like we see movements, political movements where people are committed to nonviolence work. They really work to resolve differences. Look at Mahatma Gandhi, right? Look at India's independence. Look at Martin Luther King Jr. Look at, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who's just in the past week, released a new book called The Voice for the Voiceless, which I haven't yet received my copy, but ordered, and hopefully we'll read soon. But I'm sure it's great, so I can preemptively recommend it before I've read it yet. But it really goes through the entire struggle over the last 70 years, right, of the Tibetan first invasion by China, and now their peaceful struggle for freedom and autonomy, which is ongoing for 70 years. But because it's peaceful, there's hope that there will be a solution still, right? If they tried to have a violent, war, who knows? It would be like Israel Palestine. I mean, it would be a horrible mess. It would be a horrible, horrible mess, right? Okay, verse 21. Furthermore, suffering has good qualities. Through being disheartened with it, arrogance. Sorry, I'm not seeing the whole thing. Okay, through being disheartened with it. Oh, that's better. Through being disheartened with it, arrogance is dispelled, compassion arises for those in cyclic existence, evil is shunned, and joy is found in virtue. Okay, so again, this kind of setup here, right? Shantideva has been talking about the disadvantages of anger, right? Then he talked about where anger comes from and how it arises, right? Then he was talking about how we should be, reasons for trying to endure various types of suffering without getting angry, right? And that, again, I'll just go back to it one more time, that wonderful verse, which is probably one of the top 5 quoted from this text, where it says 14 here, there is nothing whatsoever that is not made easier through acquaintance. So through becoming acquainted with small harms, I should learn to patiently accept greater harms. So again, these kinds of verses that are setting up for us the whole practice, right? Patience here, resilience here. It's not like just a one-time deal, like you just, sit down and you do the 10-minute meditation, and then you got it, you figured out this is patience, this is resilience. I got it. Now I just do that same thing again and again, and I'm good, and I'll conquer my anger. No, it's like there are many different aspects to figuring out, to understanding how our mind works, how anger arises, and then how we can build resilience to overcome it. So it's sort of like setting up in our mind the framework for how we're going to challenge and overcome our anger, right? So this is a big part of it, just recognition, right? We are creatures of habit. As long as we continue to let ourselves be overwhelmed by the anger in our own minds, right? If we let ourselves be controlled by our minds, we won't be able to control our mind. If our mind is controlling us, we're not controlling our mind. So what do? We have to decide, no, I'm going to control my mind. It doesn't come in an instant though, right? But it becomes easier through acquaintance, So we start with just recognizing that, okay, this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. I'm going to need to put effort into it over time, but the results are worth it, right? Why is it worth it? Because, again, going back to the first verse of this chapter, first and second verse, whatever wholesome deeds, such as venerating the Buddhas and generosity that have been amassed over 1,000 eons, will all be destroyed in one moment of anger. There is no evil like hatred and no fortitude. And again, fortitude here means more like a challenge, right? There's no greater challenge than patience. Thus, I should strive in various ways to meditate on patience. So that's the value of doing this, right? We start up again from the very beginning of this chapter. anger is so damaging, right? It can destroy 1,000 eons of goodness that I've cultivated, right? Much less one lifetime, right? So you can imagine 1,000 eons. Well, just think about this lifetime. Put so much effort into being generous, to volunteering, to being kind to your friends and neighbors and family, to doing things for others, to cultivating more love, more compassion. And one more moment of anger, it can all be destroyed. Well, then we better really, really do something about this anger. Okay, let's go back now to the next. Where are we? So this is now talking about how there are good qualities of anger. So now we're seeing that, sorry, of suffering, not good qualities of anger. There are good qualities of suffering. Okay, where are we? 21. Furthermore, suffering has good qualities, right? So what it's showing us is that even though we have this suffering, okay, we know we don't want to get angry because that's terrible for us, right? We also know that with practice, with habituation, it gets easier to control our anger. It gets easier to not give in, to resist anger, right? And we also know that, right, we're going to have to face suffering in our path or in our efforts to get rid of anger, right? As it says in this verse here, when war is being waged against the disturbing conceptions, much harm is caused at the times of battle. Okay, so we know that there's going to be some obstacles we face, suffering that we have to encounter as we try and do a spiritual practice. But okay, there's some suffering. It has some good qualities, right? So Shantideva is pointing out, like, don't worry too much. The suffering is actually good for you, right? A little bit, right? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Essentially, this is what he's saying. But he's actually saying more than this. Is not just that it makes you stronger, but there's specifically these 5 benefits, right? Through being disheartened with it. So suffering has good qualities, not because it's good to feel suffering, but because it allows you to build your wisdom, right? And you see that by being disheartened with it, right? Because the suffering is suffering, because it sucks, because we don't like it, you become disheartened with it. And then what? Arrogance is dispelled. Oh, sorry, it's 4 benefits, it says, not 5. Arrogance is dispelled. Compassion arises for those in cyclic existence. Evil is shunned, and joy is found in virtue. So how does it do that? Well, through being disheartened with it, arrogance is dispelled. I mean, think about it. People who are sort of on top of the world, have everything going for them, they don't have any big sufferings in their life or any major, physical illness, any major, they things are sort of going well. They have enough wealth, they have enough, their family relations are okay, they're doing well. It's easy to get arrogant, right? But if you meet some big suffering, it's like, oh, maybe I'm not, you know, numero uno. Maybe I'm not on the top of the world, right? No, it's not. Again, this is a little bit tricky because we have to here be able to distinguish self-confidence from arrogance, right? So we don't want to lose our self-confidence and become totally despondent and give up and say, oh, life is horrible. I can't go on. That's not what it means to dispel arrogance. That's losing your self-confidence, right? Losing hope. That's not what this is teaching. What Shantideva is saying is your arrogance is dispelled. Arrogance, again, is a misperception because it's inflating who you really are and putting down others, right? It inflates yourself and puts others down. There's even other ways arrogance can work to, it's not always like that, but essentially it's over focused on yourself and your qualities and things about you. And again, it's something that you have to sort of do a bit of meditation on just to become aware. What does arrogance really feel like in your experience? So we have to learn to identify it, just like with anger, right? The sense of inflation, the sense of being puffed up. It feels like that even in your sort of body mind. It's sort of this puffing up, right? But arrogance is dispelled because why? Because you realize I can't control everything. I'm not the king of the world. I can't control everything. Arrogance is dispelled. Compassion arises for those in cyclic existence. Again, cyclic existence, not to go into the full detail, but it's very, general explanation. It's simply the state of having to be born. We've all done that already in this lifetime. But then what we haven't done yet in this lifetime is die. So we have to be born, then die, but then be born again, then die again. So cyclic existence, right? Cycles. And all that without having control over it, right? All that just kind of by the force of our previous actions or karma, sort of just propelling us through, not having control. Just like when we fall asleep at night, we enter into dreams, right? If you ever remember your dreams, we can know we have no control over what we dream. It just sort of comes up. That's really exactly what it's like when we die and then have to take birth again. Our consciousness is just propelled by previous imprints that are there, and then we take birth again. So compassion arises because we're experiencing the suffering now. When we have the suffering, right? We feel this sucks. This is really, really hard. This is really painful. This is uncomfortable. This isn't what I want. It's also not what others want, but they also face these similar problems, right? Everyone, every living being, right, is sort of limited in terms of the scope of our experience. So we only experience the suffering, happiness, the emotions, the thoughts within this one collection of body mind, right? Your own. You only experience that directly. But we have very similar experiences to other beings, right? Because we're all in the same boat, right? The same basic situation of being in cyclic existence, of meeting things you don't want, not getting things you do want, finally getting something you want and being temporarily satisfied and even blissful and joyous, and then separating from it. Then it gets sick, then it breaks, then it dies, then you die. So we're all in that these are basic universal experiences, right? Breaking a bone, getting a burn, getting a bug bite, getting a headache, getting an injury, getting sick. So we have compassion because we see what it's like, right? If you don't see what it's like, if you're always sort of just, keeping suffering at bay through somehow you manage, you have enough wealth to always have really good, physical conditions around you, and you manage to just be lucky enough to not get any serious illness, which happens, of course. Luckily, there are. I mean, and that's good. Like we don't want to say that we wish people to get ill, but when you do get it in the unfortunate circumstance, then it humbles you, grounds you, right? And then you can see, oh, this is what other beings are experiencing, right? If you lose your job or your wealth or something happens to your sort of, situation and you're dropped into a lower whatever social, societal bracket. Oh, this is what it's like to be poor. This is what it's like to be homeless. Oh, I never even knew. Now you can start to have more compassion for others in the same situation. And of course, again, hopefully none of you will ever fall into a state like homelessness or poverty. I really hope so. But we can still meditate on the suffering of people in those scenarios, to have compassion for them. And then whatever else suffering, because it's inevitable, some kind of suffering will come to us, right? Whatever suffering does come, we can just sort of use our imaginative capacity to sort of expand even more broadly. So of course, directly having compassion for those who have like the same experience you're having. Oh, I lost my friend, or my spouse divorced me, or partner split up, or oh, I yeah, I lost a lot of money somehow. The stock market crashed and I lost all my money. Whatever it is, you can start with compassion for that particular suffering that others have, but then expand beyond. But oh, I lost all my wealth in the stock market. But wait, no, really, I didn't lose all. I still have a house. I still have a car. is, the stock market's going to go up again. Well, but some people don't have any stock. Some people have no wealth, literally no possessions, no assets, I should say, no house or car, right? Many people, actually, many billions of people, actually. So yeah, just expand your compassion for others, and that only comes when you're really faced with suffering. What else is good about it? Evil is shunned. Evil meaning negative actions, right? Our negative actions. Why? Because this now we have to combine our suffering with an understanding of karma here, right? This does take a little bit of a stretch then, because we're learning about this kind of concept that's very subtle, not obvious, not directly obvious to understand. And again, very, very, very important, the big misunderstanding that's so easy to get because our culture and our sort of the philosophical underpinnings in our culture make it so that we assume that any kind of explanation of of what brings suffering or happiness that's tied to personal action, caused by personal action, we assume that there's a sense of then blame in that picture of reality. But in the Buddhist worldview, the Buddhist picture of reality, there is just no blame. So there is a connection between personal action and then the suffering or happiness that a person experiences. If I kill someone in this life, then later in this life or in a future life, I will experience some suffering. Maybe myself being killed or hit or harmed, or just my life being shorter by illness. That doesn't mean that I deserve it, right? No sentient being deserves any suffering ever. It's just that there is a reality to cause and effect, right? There's a causal reality to our experiences. That's really the end of it, right? There's no one deciding who gets to experience what. There's no one making a rule book saying that that's the kind of action that you must do to please me as a creator or something like that. It's simply a kind of physics, you could say, a kind of physics, but within an ethical realm of physics in a sense, right? You do certain actions, if they harm others, then you get harmed back, just like, right? For any action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, Newton's laws of motion, right? Really, really no different. I mean, the specifics are different, but in terms of it just being a natural law, it's no different. So there's no sense of blame. We just recognize that this is a natural law. And so if I do evil, here it says evil, but just any harmful action that harms another being, then I'll get harmed. And since I'm having the suffering now, see how bad it is, see how much I don't like it. Well, I don't want to do the cause of it. So that makes you stop doing harmful actions. Okay. So that's the third benefit of suffering. And then joy is found in virtue. So likewise, you see, oh, well, if suffering is this terrible, don't like it. Well, what would I like? Happiness. Well, what's the cause of happiness? Virtue. Virtue means, again, helpful act. Any action that is helpful to others or sort of either refraining from harming others, that's also a virtue, or actively helping others. And it doesn't mean necessarily a physical action, right? Sitting there and thinking, may you have happiness, may you be free of suffering. That itself is virtue. So it can be just within your mind, right? And your words, right? Speaking kindly, speaking in a way that helps others, listening to others. All this is virtue. So you take joy in the virtue. You're thinking, oh, I see how bad suffering is, so I'm not going to do the negative actions. Well, I'll do positive actions so that I can experience less suffering, more happiness. So again, those last two, that really is based in an understanding of karma. But the first two, just arrogance is dispelled and compassion arises for those in cyclic existence. Those you don't really need to think about karma. You just directly seeing this is what suffering means, right? Means that I'm not, top of the world. and others are also in the same boat as me, so have compassion for them. Number 22. As I do not become angry with great sources of suffering, such as jaundice, then why be angry with animate creatures? They too are provoked by condition. Okay, so now we're shifting gears a little bit. So this chapter again is so beautiful, and it's fairly complex, and he doesn't really warn you when he's jumping into a new section. But now we start at like a new section of the chapter. It's like going on for the next maybe 10 verses, where it's really taking a more philosophical look at anger and trying to undermine anger through sort of a more logical or philosophical argument here. What's the main argument? Well, everything is merely created by conditions. That's the main point he's making here, but let's see how he makes it. So, as I do not become angry with great sources of suffering, such as jaundice, then why be angry with animate creatures? They too are provoked by conditions. Okay, so what are you saying? What do you think he's saying? Does anyone have any suggestion? Maybe I'll see what you guys think this verse is about before I say anything. You can just unmute, or anyone here in person can also say something. Okay, I'm not hearing anything yet. Okay, I'll just jump in. Okay, as I did not become angry with great sources of suffering such as jaundice. Okay, what is jaundice? It's a liver disease. It's a disease. Yeah, don't have to know the much detail. Point is, it's a disease. Okay, and it's a great source of suffering, a big disease. So he's saying, Shantideva is saying, well, when I have a disease, it's not like I become angry at the disease, right? Now, of course, here it's not like saying never. Some people, we can become angry at anything, either real or imagined. You can become angry at anything. Okay, sure, that's possible. But in general, right? In general, right? We don't really have the bulk of our anger isn't towards things like diseases. It's towards things like other people, right? The bulk of our anger. Okay. So I do not become angry with great sources of suffering. So even though we have a disease, a cancer, a liver disease, a kidney disease, heart condition, all the diseases that we can get, and unfortunately, yeah, we all usually most people will get some disease at some point in their life. They manage to live long enough. So I don't get angry at the disease. I'm not getting angry at the jaundice, right? Why? Well, it's just the disease. It's just my body just had some malfunction, or I took, there's some environmental factor, some substance, maybe, if I smoked or drank or whatever, that maybe led to it. But either way, it's just a condition of the body. Why get angry? How could I get angry? It's just because the body changed. Nature is to change and morph, and sometimes it malfunctions, you can say, right? Dysfunction in the body just happened because of conditions. Well, then why be angry with animate creatures? Animate creatures, living beings, right? Animate creatures, animal, human, all beings. They too are provoked by conditions. Okay, so this is the key. They too are provoked by conditions. Okay, how so? Verse 23. Although they are not wished for, these sicknesses arise. And likewise, although they are not wished for, these disturbing conceptions forcibly arise. No one wants to get sick. Because of certain conditions, we do. No one wants to get angry. Because of certain conditions, they do. Right? And then those animate creatures, those living beings, because of the condition of their anger, which just arose because of some impersonal, uncontrolled conditions, they were provoked. So a person, an animal, just say people, most common, right? A person is provoked by their own anger, which was caused by certain conditions. Then they do something that we don't like. We get angry at them. But why? The jaundice, the cancer, the heart disease was created by conditions. No one wanted those conditions. No one wanted it to arise. Well, no person wanted anger to arise in the first place. It's just because, let's go on. 24, without thinking I shall be angry, people become angry with no resistance. And without thinking I shall produce myself, likewise, anger itself is produced. Okay. Does it make sense? Without thinking I shall be angry, right? Again, we did the reflection at the beginning of the class, trying to observe or identify what anger is like, what conditions can create it, thinking of a specific case, what conditions created it, what kind of voice it has, right? Now, was there any part of that, really thinking about a time when you got angry in recent days? Was there any part of that where you stopped and thought to yourself, I should get angry. I should get angry right about now. That would be great. I really would love to. I mean, it would be so great if I just got really angry right now. Who in the world ever thinks that, right? It's the opposite. We justify our anger post hoc to try and make an excuse for why it was correct to be angry. We try to justify it. But we never actually start thinking, I want to get angry. But with no resistance, meaning we become angry, we can't control it. That's what it means, right? With no resistance, we just can't control it. Without thinking, I shall produce myself. And then the anger also it's not a conscious being in itself. It doesn't think, I'm going to arise at, 12 p.m. on March 15th, or whatever we are, March 20, March 20th, 22nd, 23rd. I'll arise and, cause a little havoc and then go back away. No, it just arises from conditions, right? In other words, we're taking the sense of like to say the sense of selfhood. That's really the best word I can think of. Taking the sense of selfhood out of these things, right? In other words, anger is not like a character that has its own personality that can decide to do things. Likewise, even us, right? We're not a unitary, completely independent and free self who can decide to be angry or not, right? Who just decides to get angry. Of course, we can overcome anger through slowly changing the conditions in our mind. But we're not completely in control where we can just say, okay, today at 12 p.m. I'll get angry, then at 1 p.m. I'll stop, right? It's not like that. Melinda, you had a question or comment?
Talking about how like some people want to get, like there's that concept of righteous anger, where people actually do feel anger. And I just think that or different people leading social movements or political groups, they encourage people to feel angry. It does, of course, I think all those things can be accomplished without anger, but there's still people out there trying to tell people, get angry now. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
that happens probably to you. Oh, you're supposed to be angry? Okay. I don't know if they really think that, but you know what I mean? That is an issue about anger.
Right. No, that's a very good point. Right. So righteous indignation and righteous anger. And of course, there are people who encourage others to get angry, right? Maybe this will be the last part of class because we're getting towards the end. Yeah, so what does that mean, right? Does that contradict what Shantideva is saying here? Does it give more evidence for what he's saying here? What do you guys think? Monica, which
yeah, so it's part of it is about being more mindful, right? So if you think about now I have this body of knowledge about anger. Maybe I can be more aware of those conditions and I don't fall into this mindless trap. Or, so when you lose your awareness, then all of a sudden, it's like sometimes you're just angry and then you stop and go, oh, I was so angry. And you don't, so can you do a better job of before you get so angry?
Right. And I think that's such a powerful insight and important point about the point that Melinda brought up, is that I think really what's happening, no, of course, you observe it, right? Observe it. If you're, these days with the political climate, we probably do get angry about some political scenario, right? And there's someone riling up through a rally or a speech or what have you, intentionally riling people up and trying to encourage people to get angry. So if you ever happen to be in that situation, or whether you're there at a speech or you're just listening, observe what's happening, right? Observe what are the actual steps. So you're right. Maybe someone at some point thinks, oh yeah, it's time to get angry. We have to, but I think what's really happening, now check yourself. This is my, understanding from my experience. It's more like there's already some anger there. There's already some anger there, right? Then someone else is saying something to encourage you, and you see other people start getting riled up, and you start getting excited, and you start saying, yeah, they're right, I should be more angry. So it's like there's already some anger there, and then it builds because now you're encouraging it. You say, yes, I need to be angry because of this injustice. I think if you really never had any anger about the situation to begin with, like, what would that speech or that rallying call, what would it really, it would have nothing to latch on to, right? You'd just be like, oh, okay, this is the situation. Okay. Now that leads to big questions about what to do in the face of injustice, right? Huge question when people are talking about overcoming anger. And the Buddhist position, pretty much unanimously throughout Buddhist traditions, pretty much any great master that I've ever heard, all agree that there is no saving quality to anger. In other words, it is through and through something that will only harm, and we'll be better off if we can abandon it. But does that mean abandoning your desire for social change? Does it mean abandoning your determination to bring more justice and equality or equity to the world? Does it mean, stop trying to fight for the little guy, the underdog? No, it just means to do all that without the distortion in your mind, the distortion caused by anger. The distortion caused by anger, again, is over exaggerating the negative quality of something, focusing only on that, and having that sense of destroy, that sense of go away, lashing out. But can you still see that there are negative qualities of things? Yeah, just don't over exaggerate them. But within recognizing that there are negative qualities of things, you can still work to change them, right? But it's very, very, it takes a very mature mind. Like, you have to really practice that switch from righteous indignation and the anger towards injustice to what would it really become? Compassion for injustice, compassion for those suffering in injustice, right? Or for the possibility that people would suffer if there's some kind of on, some change in a global situation or political situation that could lead to more suffering. Then you want to still prevent it out of compassion, right? Compassion, the basic desire for others to be free of suffering. So this is a very challenging thing to do, but I think it makes sense, right? okay, there's one question it seems. Shmuel, go ahead, or comment, whatever it is.
Sorry, no, it's a question, but it's on slightly different topic. So sorry for interrupting. So maybe
Go
just
ahead.
finish what you had to say. Sorry.
No, that was all. That was it. That's all I had to say.
Okay, sorry. So with regards to the verse which mentioned jaundice, so how is it different from saying, as I do not ascribe responsibility to great suffering such as jaundice, then why ascribe responsibility to animate creatures? They too are provoked by conditions.
Well, this is sort of it's a really good question. So just to clarify, the question from Shmuel is saying, I think what you're trying to say, let me rephrase it and you tell me if I'm wrong, that there's a big difference between an illness like jaundice and a person or a living being. Why? Because jaundice, it has no responsibility, right? Whereas a person or a being, they actually have responsibility for their actions. So in other words, now maybe this is reading in too much to your question, but then there is a justification for anger towards the beings, but not towards the jaundice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this is so this is what Shantideva is trying to undo in our minds, is that grasping onto that perspective or taking that perspective. So this is the funniest thing with Buddha's thought, right? The mind training of this practice to overcome anger is that the Buddha and his wisdom from his experience of becoming enlightened, right? He realized that in order to make positive progress with your mind, challenge your negative emotions, create more positive emotions, do something to make you infinitely happy. You have to take 100% personal responsibility over yourself. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama very often quotes from the Buddha, you are your own master, right? And you are your own enemy. You are your own protector, and you are your own master, you are your own protector, and you are your own enemy. What is the gist of this? We're all 100% responsible for ourselves. Now, having that perspective gives you self-confidence, gives you power, right? That gives you power to change your situation internally and externally, right? More important in this case is internally, your way of thinking. However, when we're looking at other people and even looking at ourselves, we have to realize having that attitude that I am responsible for myself and I'm my own protector, I'm my own master. That can generate other mental elements, mental factors, different aspects of your psychology, right? Energy, effort, excitement, right? Vigor. It gives you energy to think that way. But it's still, you don't want then to start thinking, and therefore, I have an independent, completely independent self, which is completely in control of everything. Because that doesn't exist. That's the self, which is the Buddha didn't accept, right? That other philosophical and spiritual traditions believe in, what's called a soul. They call it soul or Atman. But the Buddha didn't accept, right? Because you recognize that there's just many different conditions, but within all those different conditions, all the psychological conditions, all the physical conditions of our bodies, within all that, there's no single identifiable essence there. That's really, truly the I, the self, the me, right? So thinking that I'm in control, I'm my own master, again, it's what we talked about before, right? That's on the level of the conventional truth, or just the way things appear sort of from your ordinary zoomed out perspective. When you start zooming in to really find an independent or true self, the true essence of me, then you don't find anything. Okay, why is this relevant to Shmuel's question? So we are responsible as an individual, means when we want to do something, when we want to change something, we're the only one. All you can do is decide to change something and put effort in to do it, right? You can decide to start meditating for 10 minutes a day and start doing it, right? You can decide to not react in the same way you did yesterday when you got angry and shout at someone or say a snarky comment or just in your mind start to burn with anger, right? You can decide to say, wait, stop, I'm going to do something different. But when it comes to other beings, this is what Shantideva is saying is now we have to emphasize more strongly the ultimate truth, more strongly the fact that you can't find any true self in there. Just like with the illness, it's a bunch of conditions that lead to the suffering. So it is with a person who harms, some wrongdoer, some person who harms others. They're just doing it because of a bunch of conditions, provoking their own anger, which then causes them to do something harmful, right? So it's just that you have to see what's the goal of this reflection. The goal of taking on this perspective is to overcome your anger that would, again, exaggerate the negative qualities and only focus on those. Whereas when we think, oh, but I'm responsible for my own actions, I'm my own master, what's the goal of that? It's to give you encouragement, self-esteem, a sense of confidence, right? His Holiness the Dalai Lama, if you ever meet him, he has an incredible, incredible sense of personality, self-confidence, right? He has no doubts. He's always, very decisive, right? Very clear. In other words, he's not like, oh, and do I really exist or not? No, he's like very clear that he exists, right? But knowing that there's no kind of ultimate owner or controller within any of it. So they're not contradictory. So in this case, there's some responsibility. Now the question, depending on what's happening and what decision you have to make. If you're now talking about like a legal repercussion for some action someone did, okay, now again, we have to shift into recognizing that person has responsibility for their actions. But you can still recognize that within not having any truly identifiable essence of the person who has the responsibility, we still conventionally and the level of society, we have to make society function properly. That means we can't have, people running around harming others nonstop, right? I mean, we have to limit the harm that others will do based on their anger, based on their conditions. So if you have to lock them in a prison, you have to lock them in a prison, okay? Okay. Oh, so maybe since we're over, let's just do a dedication. And if there's another question, I'll be here so we can still take questions, but just in case others have to go. Okay. So everybody, let's again remember that verse by Shantideva. Going up again, verse 10 here. I'll just show it on the screen. Why be unhappy or upset? I said before, but it's another translation. Why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? Okay, so this is a powerful way of thinking, right? We're just telling ourselves, no matter what situation there is, I don't need anger, and anger is not going to help it. I don't need to be upset or unhappy, and being upset or unhappy won't help. Same with worry. I don't need worry, and the worry won't help it. Okay? Okay, so now all the energy we put into understanding our own anger, our own irritation, and learning how to slowly but surely overcome it. We now dedicate, in other words, we send it out so that all living beings can enjoy the benefit of being free from anger. Great benefit. So we dedicate all of what we've done today so that other beings may be free of anger completely. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha. that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Changchu Sem Chol Rinpoche, Ma Ge Pa Nam Ge Gyorji, Ge Ban Yam Pa Me Pa Dang, Kong Ne Kong Du Pel War Shou. Kang Ri Ra Wei Kor Wei Shin Kam Dir, Pendang De Wa Ma Lu Jung Wei Ne, Chen Re Zig Wang Tenzin Gyat So Yi, Sha Pe Si Te Bar Du Den Gyor Chi. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends. Okay, thank you everybody so much. So good to see you. Also next week, if you haven't gotten any of the communications, Venerable Puja Dabra or Venerable Ching, she will teach, but online only, so more relevant to the people here in person. There will be no in-person next weekend. And actually, I'll be going to some here in Connecticut, and Venerable Tuten Chudren, who's one of my main teachers and first teachers, she's teaching in New York City, in Brooklyn. So I'll be going there. So also that would be very good for other people. So we'll still have this 10 a.m., but just so you know, there will be also teaching in Brooklyn with Venerable Tuten Children. So if you're local, it would be very nice to go to that. Okay, so that will be online only next week. And then we haven't announced, but just so you all know, Geshe-ma Tenzin Hladren is she has her visa finally, so that went through, and she'll be coming on April 13th or leaving India on April 13th. So probably classes will start the next week after that with her, but we'll continue them going through chapter 6. We'll continue until she gets here, and then we'll start a new set of programs and classes. So next week will be online only, but then the week after, Saturday 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll continue to have a couple weeks of classes like this with me here, and then Geshe-ma Tenzin Hladren will be able to come. Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Please feel free to ask or comments even.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you say more about the Buddha's idea that there's no soul or there's no individual essence for each person?
Yeah, and it comes actually just in the next few verses. So I don't want to go into them too much because it does get kind of technical, and there could be a lot of, that question can take, years of study, but this is like the whole next, say, maybe 10 or 15 verses, several verses that are going through what the position of other, philosophical schools that posit a self or soul, what that is, and then why it's not logically sensible. But basically, like the Buddhist position, so the general position, right, of the world, in other words, most of the major philosophical, spiritual, religious traditions of the world, they have an assertion or a belief that there is some thing. It's called soul, self, Atma. There's this soul, which is the real essence of a person. Okay, now different religions will say different ideas about like sort of how it came to be. Like in Christianity, it was created by God at conception in this life, and a lot of Christian schools. Hindu schools, they don't say that, but it was came from a previous life, but it still is just this part of it, right? It's sort of like this. It's like part of the person, but it's also independent. It's the true nature or the true essence of a person, but it's not subject to the changing body, mind state of the person. Okay, it's something that is unchanging, right? It goes from lifetime to lifetime, or even throughout this life, from childhood to adolescence to adulthood to senior time. And all that time, it stays the same. It doesn't change through, right? And then if you believe in the next, an afterlife, which again, most systems that assert a soul believe in some form of afterlife, well, then it goes unchanged into that afterlife, into heaven, into hell, into another lifetime, whatever it is, right? That's like a standard belief. Okay, Sanjana, see you. Thank you for joining. Okay, Sanjana, I think it came a little late. I hope you got something from today's class. Okay.
Yes, yes, Donula, thank you. My power had gone away. It was raining for the first time in Bangalore, and being India, naturally the power went away. So that's why I had to join it. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. Oh, at least you got some rain. It had been quite dry for some
Yes,
months.
yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Bye
Okay,
bye.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a small suffering that can help you have compassion for others when you live in India and the power goes out every day. And it's like, yeah, you don't think about it here in America, right? Well, maybe it goes out once or twice a year, but okay. So the self or soul, people have this notion. Now, why? There's many things we could ask. Like, why do we have this notion? Well, simply put, it's sort of a kind of a post hoc way of, trying to give some explanation for why we have an innate sense of being I as an independent, sort of completely in control, free person. There's an innate sense of that. So because we have an innate sense of that, just sort of evolutionarily inherited, then, well, what did people do with it? People, meaning the philosophers and meditators and religious people of the past, well, they created these philosophical systems to excuse it, to explain it. So we get a soul, right? Well, the Buddha, he wasn't satisfied with that explanation. He just wanted to see directly what was really there, right? He wanted to just understand reality. Okay, so he did his meditation, and through his meditation, he was able to see actually in reality, when you really go and look, there's just not something like that there. There just are these constantly changing parts of a person and their mental, right? The whole structure and the whole collection of all these different psychological factors and conditions, and then the body with its own, the entire anatomy and physiology of the body. That's all there is. When you go and look inside, you don't actually find some essence. So where does the sense come from? Why do we have it? Well, that's the Buddhist powerful insight. It's just a fundamental ignorance. It's just an ignorance. It's a misperception. It's a misperception that's just there because of it's inherited. It came from previous time, and it's not really doesn't have an initial beginning to it. It's just this just the state we're in of having this ignorance. So why so then, yeah, essentially we can't, because Buddha, you could say Buddha was a radical empiricist, right? He's just making empirical observation about what's there, training his mind so that you can see clearly, right? And then didn't see any self, didn't see any soul there. And there's other logical ways we can get ourselves to understand it, right? You have to really use a lot of reasoning to really feel the impact of this thought, of this understanding, right? Quite simply, what is the idea of a soul? Something that's unchanging and that's independent, that's unitary, but that's also part of you. That's also the real you. Well, then what does it mean? Like, how could that thing exist, right? No matter how much effort I make to be kind, to be good, to create causes for happiness, it wouldn't even affect the soul because the soul is independent, unchanging, right? If you go from a state of suffering to a state of happiness, that's a change, right? If I decide to change to do different behaviors, that's a change. So all those things I'm changing in my life for for the sake of having a better life, even just getting training to get a better job, going for education to get a job, right? It wouldn't have any impact on this soul. So it's almost like whatever you did, the soul would, it just wouldn't be relevant to you as a human, right? To what you're doing here. So if it did exist, it would just be completely irrelevant. Like you would have no way to give it more happiness, to make a mistake and have it have less happiness. In other words, like we say, like if the soul goes on to heaven or hell, well, nothing you do would contribute to that whatsoever, because it's just this independent, unitary, permanent thing. So just logically speaking, it makes no sense, right?
Thank you. I'm curious to hear more, and you know, looking forward to digging deeper into the next part of this chapter of this book. It's been super helpful and really interesting. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Susan. Yeah, it can get we'll see the next few verses will get, they're a little philosophically demanding for sure. But, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Good. Okay. Good, everybody. So good to see you all. So next week, I won't see you, but Venerable Puja will be here. Dr. Puja Dabral. She's a wonderful teacher. So, I mean, I should say definitely attend that. But also, if you're able to attend Venerable Children's, she's also a wonderful teacher. So either one will be great. But please attend some class. Okay. Great. Have a good day or evening. Bye-bye. And we're gonna have cake here in person.